Hey everyone, it's Kat. So, after my father was found guilty and sentenced, he tried to appeal the trial by saying that his lawyer told him that there was no case, and so all that had to be done was pretty much deny the charges, and so a case was presented. That means that the lawyer did not make a true effort to defend him, and so he wanted a retrial with someone who would really make the effort to make a good defense. His appeal ended up being denied in 1987, and my father ended up going to prison. He served a total of 22 months, and he got out in 1989. So, when my dad and I are talking about this kind of stuff, there's this one story that I find really sort of interesting, and so I figured I'd share it with you guys. So, there was this one time when the parole officer told my dad that he tested positive for methamphetamines. And my dad obviously completely denied this, saying that, well, he doesn't use drugs or anything, that maybe it was the allergy medications that he was taking, like Sudafed. But the parole officer said, no, their tests never lie, they're never wrong or anything, and that my dad was taking meth. And so the next time that my dad ended up going to get tested, he also went to the University Medical Center and made sure that he made an arrangement with them that every time he went to get tested for the parole officer, he would also go and get tested at the University Medical Center. And so, sure enough, the next time, the parole officer called up and said, yep, you have tested positive for methamphetamines, that's a parole violation. My dad said, well, no, that's wrong. He went and took another test of the same type, and it said that he had not been taking methamphetamines. And so he also told the parole officer that, every time after that, when he goes to get tested for the parole officer, he would also go and get tested by the medical center. And then if the parole officer says that he's still positive, then they can go in front of a judge and talk it out. And I just find it sort of interesting about how the fact that, well, every time after that, he was never, ever tested positive for methamphetamines ever again. And so I just thought that was an interesting story. My dad did very well in the university. He was one of the top students in his class, and even one of his professors, who he took multiple classes from, said that he was in the top 1%. It was actually written in one of the recommendation letters. And so he ended up graduating with honors in 1997. And that year actually happened to be a really good year because not only did my dad graduate, but my mom graduated, they got married, and my dad got a Certificate of Rehabilitation. So, for those of you who don't know, a Certificate of Rehabilitation is really quite difficult to get. They only give it to the lowest of low-risk offenders, and that's even just for a chance to get it. And it used to be that there was a law that if you had a Certificate of Rehabilitation, you had a chance to not have to register anymore. And it's like you could turn it in and they'll say that, okay, you don't have to register anymore. And so, to get it, my dad ended up going through a whole new investigation. They had a whole new detective look into him, and they had a forensic psychologist look into him, things about him, including school records, past records, everything like that, investigating the people around him. And I actually have a report from an official MD forensic psychologist, and he's saying his behavior in the last 16 years demonstrates a pro-social attitude and a lack of pedophilic disorder. And so that alone shows that really my father was a very low risk. He still is. And I mean, they had letters of recommendation from multiple different people who said things like, I trust him with my life, and if I had a child or a family, I could trust him to care for them as he would his own life. I mean, that's saying something. This is from one of his friends who he knew for 25 years when this letter was written. And he's saying, I have not seen any evidence that my friend is in any way a pedophile. There is no alcoholism or drug abuse that he has ever shown evidence of. I mean, this is from someone who he was very close to for 25 years, a good friend, and I mean, it takes a lot to say that, I would trust him with my life. I would trust him with the life of my family if I had one, or with kids if I had one. And there's even another letter from someone who knew my dad for 5 years when the letter was written, and he states, "He has impressed me over and over again with his consistency, honesty, and reliability, and the fact that he has become so trustworthy in my eyes that I trust him with my life." Another person who knew him only for 5 years at that time, also saying that he would trust my dad with his life. And another person is saying how he's a very honest person, he is very reliable and very stable, and how he has never seen my dad lose his temper or get involved in any fights, and that his reputation is very good. I mean, just so many people saying good things about him, saying how reliable he is, how honest he is, how they would trust him with so many things, that including their lives. I mean, it takes a lot to say that you would trust someone with your life, that you would trust them to not hurt you and not let you have bad things happen to you. I mean, it's a really deep trust, and it's a deep thing. I mean, more people say resourcefulness, quality of results, contribution to the team, and quality of communication are characteristics that my father has, and that he's high rated by his peers in all areas. And things like the fact that he is one of the best students in the upper 1%, and that he is very professional, and that his advice is great help to other people around him. I mean, all that people have had to say about my father in this time, and even up to now, is that he's a good person, he is honest, and that greatly influenced his getting a certificate of rehabilitation. And I really think that, the fact that so many people think these kinds of things, that he should have been able to get on with his life. And you would have thought that he could get on with his life and get married and have a family, have a kid, and just move on from all of the bad. And it's really unfortunate that this really wasn't the case, because after he got the certificate of rehabilitation, things did end up starting to go sour. I mean, they ended up stalling his being able to go and try and get off the registry. They were stalling him going into court and everything until the law was changed. And then once the law was changed, it didn't matter that he had a certificate of rehabilitation. They wouldn't do anything with it. It didn't have any impact, really. And so that was pretty much the beginning of how it went sour from there. And I just hope this video was interesting, because that's all I have to say.